Hi, this is Jim Cranston from 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com, the podcast and website about reimagining your life. Thanks for joining me today to talk about, well, making a difference. So let's get started. If you like what you hear tonight, please tell your friends, leave a like, subscribe, send me a message. So tonight we're going to be talking about making a real difference in something that matters to you. We'll talk about in two contexts and not about the potential outcome itself, but rather what working from a place of true life passion can accomplish for you. This is being recorded on June 17th. It's the June 17th, 2025 episode. And this is 3 days after the countrywide, actually worldwide, No Kings protests. And so if you haven't heard of them or weren't sure of the message, it was simply that the office of the President of the United States is simply one of the three branches of our constitutional republic, and that no president, including the current one, is above the law nor the Constitution, and is not authorized, to just ignore laws that they find inconvenient. So to be clear, this is hardly the first attempt in the executive branch, and certainly not the only attempt to target people by race or ethnicity or religion. And one of the more blatant recent ones that always comes to mind, of course, is the incarceration of people of Japanese descent after the attack on Pearl Harbor. But there are a number of other ones that have happened throughout history, starting from very early in our republic. But the defining matter is that all of them were stopped and overturned by a combination of the other two branches of the government, the Congress and the judiciary branch. And often that whole change was encouraged, we might say, by the support of the common people. So everybody got together, really made a lot of noise, and Congress and the judiciary realized that, we can't let this go on. So that's what the protests were about. And a lot of people, myself included, thinking kind of like, well, where did this actually come from? You know, you don't put together something like that overnight, but it's also, you don't just throw it together. There had to be something where it came from. And so the underlying framework for the No Kings protest came from a group called Indivisible. And as in one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, from our U.S. Pledge of Allegiance. And Indivisible was actually aided by over 200 other organizations. So, the whole thing was a big effort. But stepping back, the whole concept was actually started by two people who were Indivisible's founders, Leah Greenberg and Ezra Levin. And they met when they were congressional staffers at Congress. So before you think that makes them just too elite and too exclusive or whatever, or a little tiny group, right now, I think it's this year, there are around 31,000 congressional staffers. And that's the same or larger than any town within about 60 miles of where I live. And I live in a somewhat populous part of the state. So you have this huge mass of people, but they happen to meet there, and they had a lot of common goals and a passion to make those goals come true. And that's one of the big cruxes that we're going to talk about. So these two highly motivated individuals wanted to do something, and that passion and focus ultimately ended up creating a worldwide protest of well over 5 million people, which is pretty impressive results for a couple of folks who wanted to get a political message across, and ended up doing it to help with over 5 million other people. 2 to 5 million. That's a 2.5 million to 1 multiplication of your efforts, which comes all the way back to you and to me and to everyone who feels they have nothing to contribute or they couldn't ever do anything really important, and any of the other excuses that we all tell ourselves. If something's truly important to you, and you can show other people why it should be important to them, then there are limitless ways to make a positive change in the world. In the chat group of one of my mentors, there was a recent comment from someone who had just joined at the age of 71. Now, most of the people in this course, like they're in their 20s or 30s, and a number of people in their 40s, but they're all younger people looking to get going and make huge changes in the world. But the person said not only did they think that their age wasn't a hindrance, but it was actually the basis of their superpowers that they wanted to teach others. So that's a really positive and forward-looking approach to making a positive change. And while this person's results may not be as obvious to the rest of the world as a multi-million person rally, nothing says they might not be as influential in their outcomes as any other huge thing that you see, obviously. Remember, we talk about this a lot, that very often when you make a little tiny change in something, that can really ripple out in a very positive way. So if you have something you think is important and you teach it to a couple other people, and they teach it to a couple other people, maybe one of those people goes on to start a company or a class or something, and they teach it to some other people, that little effect just keeps rippling out bigger and bigger and bigger in a very positive way. So I would encourage everyone, the next time you think that you want to make a positive change, but it's too late or you're too old or too young or whatever, just stop for a minute and stop all the negative self-talk, which I know sometimes is hard, but just stop and try and clear your mind and then think about what it is really that you want to accomplish. You know how to do it using the SMART goals. We've talked about that. And do a quick review of some of the next steps you think you could do to get working on that goal. Not to finish it, just to get started. Then think about the simplest next step that you could take. And probably it is pretty simple. And write it down on a piece of paper or put it in your calendar and make a commitment to start by just doing that small, maybe even seemingly insignificant next step. And then just keep doing that. And every day, you'll be moving forward and closer to your goals. Remember, the 5+ million person No Kings protest started with 2 people who wanted to make a difference. So that's it for the evening. Thank you so very much for stopping by. Always, of course, your homework tonight is to take any goal that you've been carrying around for a while, but felt it was too big to be achievable, or whatever, for whatever reason, you just couldn't get started on it, and break it down into some steps and try and figure out how to start working in that first small, maybe even tiny step. Then extra points if you try and approach it using our SMART goals and really lay out the beginnings of a plan to reach your goal. And you might be surprised where you end up. So, as always, remember that there are a lot of places going on right now. There's wars and unrest and stuff pretty much everywhere you turn your head, actually. It's sometimes a little concerning, to say the least, but we all have the option of making a change one way or the other. And so we have here ukr7.com. That's links to places to support the people of Ukraine. And then, of course, the other one is worldcentralkitchen.org. They work around the world in disaster areas and just bring food and necessary supplies to people. And besides these 2 big, international organizations we always talk about, probably there's a lot of local people near where you live and such and they're doing work too, and they can always use your help. And if it's not, it can be your help and support in a lot of different ways. If you can give money, great. If you give time, even better sometimes. And if you can just tell other people about it and just encourage and keep it in people's minds. The thing to remember is, we always talk about this, if you look outside yourself and see the rest of the world, it really changes your perspective on things and gives you different insight as to how you can move things forward in very positive ways. So even something as simple as smiling, you meet somebody in the street, wish them a good day, can make a huge positive difference. And sometimes if something's really important to you, you get together with all your friends and maybe you end up with 5 million friends. So never give up on yourself and always move forward on things. So remember, one of the best ways to care for yourself is to care for others. Check it out, ukr7.com, wck.org. As always, thank you for stopping by. If you found something interesting or useful, please pass it along. And please subscribe and hit that like button. If not, please drop me a comment as to what you'd like to hear. Have a great week. Remember to live the life that you dreamed of, because that's the path to true contentment. Love and encouragement to everyone. See you next week on 7 Every Minute and 7everyminute.com. Thank you.